And so what we're doing right now is really, really important. And your involvement with us is really, really important. We have a couple of aldermen in the room. We have Alderman Bill Mills down here. You raise your hand. We have Alderman Dave Dorhoff up here. We have Alderman here.
Yeah.
Alderman Turner in the back. We're involved in this by our role as elected officials, but your involvement is more important than our involvement, because we want to hear what your vision is for Harrisonville. So again, I want to thank you for taking time to come out tonight, and please feel free to get to know each other. And as you move around the room and as you listen to the presentation, we want you to understand that we want the very best for Harrisonville. We're excited that Harrisonville is moving forward now, and we'll continue that trajectory. So I'm going to turn it over to Roger Crow. He's our community planner. Roger.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to introduce the consulting team that we have with us this evening. They are doing our comprehensive plan. This will be about a 9 month to a year process. At this point, we anticipate being done around April. We went through a pretty extensive process, a very competitive process, and we probably got the best proposals nationwide I've ever seen in my career in planning to do this comprehensive plan. And our firm that's working with us, Will Evans, rose to the top, and so we're thrilled to have them working on this project. And they're going to take it from here. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Graham Smith.
Thank you, Roger. Good evening, everyone. My name is Graham Smith. I'm with Will Evans. We're located here in Kansas City, up in the Westport area. And we couldn't be happier to be working with the city of Harrisonville on this plan. Excuse my voice. I was just saying, I think I've been on the phone all day long, so I'm a little gravelly here. But I think the mayor said it perfectly, because what we want to do tonight is we want to tell you what we've been up to. But more than anything, we want to hear from you all. And I do see some familiar faces in the room. So I expect you all not to ruin the surprise at the end of this. Just a joke, come on. This is supposed to be. So we're going to go through a short presentation. Again, telling you kind of what we've been up to. Some of that information we're going to go through real quickly is in more depth on these boards in the back, so you can look at that. And then Abby's going to let you know about some things that are already posted online and how you can continue to stay involved. But then we want to spend the majority of our time hearing from you. So in addition to myself and Abby Kinney and Drew Pearson over here to my left, Drew's with Wilson & Company, our traffic and transportation and utility consultant. Rich Kaplan with RCA is our economic development consultant. And then ETC is our survey consultant, for those of you that got a citywide survey. That's who put that out. And then Davis Preservation was our historic preservation consultant, which that plan has already been produced. But these other folks that you see on the page here, if you see them wandering around town and taking pictures and measuring things, don't be alarmed. They're part of our team, and they're just trying to get to know the city. So, a little bit about Will Evans real quick. We've been around for about 47, 48 years. For the last 45 of those, we've been in the Kansas City area. And for about the last 35 years, we've been doing community planning, doing comprehensive plans, doing urban design plans. We write a lot of zoning code as well, which is a little piece of this project that we'll get to towards the end. We also do on-call planning services. So sometimes in the day, we sit in Roger's chair and we do development review, which we think really helps our consulting business as well and our consulting services. So pretty well-rounded set of skills there. And for you all, we're doing the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. Real quick, for those of you that don't know what a comprehensive plan is, the comprehensive plan is really the guiding policy document for the physical development of the community. It is a planning commission document by state statute, but typically that becomes planning commission and city council because it needs to be adopted. But what we strive to do with the comprehensive plan is really make I'll say a good or solid decision-making tool for not only your elected officials, your appointed officials in terms of planning commission and folks like that, but you as everyday citizens, you as business owners, so that you can implement the future that is going to be defined during this process. So that decision-making tool should help you with land use decisions, development decisions, future public infrastructure and public investment decisions, and those types of things to move the community towards that vision. And that's the piece that we want to start tonight, really, is focusing on what is that vision for the future. Real quick, in addition to our public meetings and the public involvement that you see on the left side of the screen here, which we'll have, this is the first of 3 workshops that we'll have, so please stay involved. And then we'll have the adoption process at the end of the planning process, which is also a public process. We also have a steering committee and a technical committee. Our steering committee is made up of citizens of the community, and that's really just a smaller group that generally went through the same exercise that we're going to go through tonight to get your feedback so far, and then they'll kind of mirror the discussions we're having with the public. But that smaller group allows us to get into a little bit more detail, if you will, about some of the things that we want to talk about. But really, it's a similar process to the public process. And then our technical committee is really a resource from the city side. So engaging people in utilities and codes and development and public works, fire and police, and making sure that all of those things are accounted for in this planning document. So we'll rely on them for technical expertise and data more than anything. So real quickly, you can see we're here in October. This is our first public meeting. We've spent the last few months doing what we call the community understanding. And by and large, that's analyzing data. So we've been looking at population growth, we've been looking at other demographics, we've been looking at land use, transportation systems, natural systems, parks and rec, all of the things that go into a comprehensive plan, which we'll get into some more tonight. But as I said, as Roger alluded to, we're about a 9 to 12 month process, and this is the first of our public workshops, and we'll have 2 more, as you can see here in green, and then that final green star is the adoption process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Abby, and she's going to walk you through a little bit of the community understanding.
Thanks, Graham.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Abby Kinney. I'm an urban planner at Gold Evans. I've been working with Gold Evans for about a little more than 4 years now. I want to give you guys an overview of what this kind of first phase has been all about, because it's really been us with our heads down, kind of trying to develop an understanding of where Harrisonville is today from a lot of different perspectives. And that enables us to kind of, bring the conversation to you all to think about the future, think about where we can go from here. So as part of this first phase, what we call community understanding, we've developed what's called a community profile, which can be accessed on the web. We have a project website called planharrisonville.com. And so if you go to that website, you can sign up for the email list if you want us to contact you directly. And you can also get this presentation for those who aren't able to come to this meeting tonight. We have an opportunity for people to participate in the activities that we'll do that Graham was calling a surprise. So if there are people that you know that weren't able to make it tonight, there's ways that they can participate in these activities that we'll do tonight. We also have the survey report. So for those of you who filled out that community survey, we have a summary of the survey report on the board there, but that we have a detailed document that has that information. And then we have the historic preservation plan. So the historic preservation plan is a process that helps to support some recommendations about how we specifically think about the historic downtown square and how the revitalization of the square happens, as well as the preservation of the square. So those recommendations are going to be carried into this overall process as we're thinking about the citywide perspective, but making sure to incorporate those recommendations. So the preservation plan, these are just some of the recommendations that it includes, and I encourage you to go to the website and take a look at that document. That we've included a copy of that document so you can review it. It talks about updating the period of significance, because the last time the historic district was established, there were a lot of buildings that weren't yet historic, but probably are historic now today as time has passed. A lot of discussion around providing incentives for preservation, as well as looking to identify tourism needs and attracting people to the downtown square and really kind of positioning downtown as a destination that is not just for people in the community, but also for people within the region to visit. Oops. The community survey report, so like I said, there's some information on the board. There's a much longer report on the website, but it really helps us to understand not only how people are seeing the community now, how people see the quality of life in Harrisonville, but also, some of the priorities that we might think about and incorporate into recommendations as we move further into the process. Things like street maintenance were a big topic that people talked about, in addition to maintaining buildings as well as waste management. So making sure that that's a priority and something that we're thinking about when thinking through recommendations for the comprehensive plan. The community profile is currently on the website, and I'll go through some of the kind of general topics that we have been thinking through, what we're learning from doing mapping, data, and and what we'd really like to do tonight is to kind of outline what we've learned through data, but recognizing that we're not driven by data, we are informed by data, and we want this to be kind of a conversation for you all to give us feedback on what you'd like to see in the future and where you think the recommendations are. So with that, I am going to pass it to Drew to talk a little bit about transportation and regional positioning.
Thank you very much. Hey guys, as I mentioned, I'm Drew Pearson with Wilson & Company, and so one of the things that we first started looking at was obviously the transportation network. There's quite a lot of transportation modes that meet up in Harrisonville. We have the highway, the state highway system, the federal interstate system, and then all the railways, as well as some of the trails that started to develop around the park area to the north. And so, we really see this as a really great asset for growth for the community. On the next one too, thinking about kind of traffic and the growth that has already been realized, we're starting to look at the traffic volumes on I-49/US 71. And we saw some new trips, around 3,000 new trips the last 4 or 5 years per day. So that's a sizable increase. It's showing the community's growing. So leveraging the traffic that's flowing through town, and also the existing residents and potentially new residents. So additionally, we looked at some of the high traffic crossings, thinking about safety. This is important as you have pedestrians and autos crossing certain live train routes. And then also thinking about some of the work that's been done previously on one of the boards back there, the transportation board here, pulled together some of the previous recommendations on where trails should go, where sidewalks should go, and kind of the opportunities to connect residents to services. And so thinking about that from like a kind of a recreational trip perspective, but also maybe it's short trips like getting to the grocery store. So we think that we're looking for your input on where those facilities might be best placed, and understanding kind of the opportunities to get some momentum around some of the active transportation as well. And then also thinking about where the new interchange up near the hospital is, how does that play into connecting into the city? Some of the commercial routes on the commercial street, what are the appropriate dimensions of sidewalks, setbacks? So we're starting to get into some of those things as well. And really, there's probably some small projects or smaller projects that really could help connect the existing system quite a bit. So we started to identify some of those. And yeah, so I'll pass it back to Abby. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. So some of the other topics that we touched on, and I'll go through this pretty quickly so that we can spend more time talking to you all. But one of the things that we looked into is the current housing market and some opportunities there. So currently, we've identified the relative affordability of the housing market as a pretty big asset in Harrisonville, not only for existing residents, but also for potentially people moving to Harrisonville, as well as first-time home buyers. We've also identified kind of a need to build new housing in the community, and that there's kind of a missing type of housing that is, you guys are actually getting quite a few building permits now, and you can stand to get more in the future. So kind of thinking about how the city could be proactive about anticipating that growth and strategic about where that growth happens and how do you utilize existing infrastructure to support it. Also thinking about the downtown neighborhoods. There's not just, housing growth doesn't just happen, by building subdivisions, but also it could happen by building on a vacant, smaller piece of property. So thinking about the difference between what that means and how the city supports and facilitates that into the future will be something that we'll want to think about in this process. And then also, looking at the rental market as well. So rents are relatively affordable compared to the region. So that, might be, that might be something that we see as an asset in Harrisonville, that there's options for people who are renting, especially for people who are aging and young adults. That is a really big factor for them as well. So just a few of the things that we're looking at and thinking through in terms of the housing data. The retail market is another aspect that we're looking at. So retail is a huge employer in Harrisonville, and it has remained stable despite the pandemic. So that's a really good thing. And despite changes in purchasing habits, a lot of people are buying things online, and in Harrisonville it's stayed relatively stable. So that's a really good thing. So thinking about how the city is positioned to support retail in the future, there's a lot of commercial property, but thinking about where is the best placement for retail, how to target that investment in retail in the future, and then thinking about what other kinds of uses support retail, other kinds of commercial uses, for example, offices, people in offices might go and support the businesses as well as residents. So kind of thinking about how you be strategic about the different uses that can help support that, and then thinking about the strategic advantage of the sales tax rate. It's quite low in Harrisonville, and that's a really good thing for supporting consumers being able to purchase things as well as businesses. And then if business districts wanted to be strategic, they have a little bit of buffer room if they wanted to do some kind of special district to fund improvements. So that's your strategic advantage that is unique to Harrisonville especially. There's also the industrial market, so also a really big employer in the city, a really important sector that we're looking at. You guys, like Drew mentioned, you guys are very much connected to lots of different transportation systems, not just the highways, but you have the airport, you have freight as well, and so that's an important strategic advantage, and you guys are very well positioned to have potential future industrial growth. So again, how can the city be proactive about if that growth happens? Where does it go? Where should it go? What kinds of jobs could be offered in Harrisonville into the future? And then again, you guys have a low property tax, and that's a strategic advantage for folks who want to move their industrial plant in a particular town. The property tax is very important for industrial. And then office. So the office market is kind of a big question mark right now, but it doesn't mean that people won't be in offices. I'm in an office currently, so we'll want to think about what's the best place for offices in the community over the next 20 years. There's lots of smaller offices that are currently in Harrisonville. How can we promote those to be reinvested in and be strategic about, potentially what kinds of businesses should offices be near to help support kind of all kinds of small businesses in town. And then also, thinking about changes in workplace. Following the pandemic, there's some habits that have changed. There's a lot of people that are working from home and can live anywhere. So that's something that a lot of towns and cities are thinking about, how do you attract remote workers to live in the city when they can live anywhere? So those are some things that we could be focusing on as we're kind of moving through this process and thinking about the future. So just generally, growth capacity. Like I said, there's growth in undeveloped areas and where there's no infrastructure. There's growth in large tracts of land that are served by infrastructure, and then there's lots of little missing I would say missing teeth, areas where there's gaps, and so we'll want to. And then there's also the growth in existing buildings. So not a vacant lot, but an existing building that can be rehabbed and reinvested in. So there's all different kinds of growth. It's not just one thing. And so the city can be a really important partner for supporting growth into the future, for being strategic and making sure that it's reflective about what people want to see and what kind of community people want Harrisonville to be 20 years from now and even further into the future. So it's really important to kind of get that right and think through some of these policies early so that the city can be very proactive and be a partner in the growth that does occur. So just to go through a couple of emerging themes that we're thinking about, and this is by no means a definitive list, but we'd like to understand your thoughts on what are the big topics that we should be thinking about and thinking about, in terms of the next 20 years. So some of the themes that we've included is obviously we've talked about job growth. There's a lot of different kinds of jobs that could be located in Harrisonville, and what do you all think the strategic opportunities are? What kinds of jobs would you like to see in Harrisonville? The downtown, so revitalization of the downtown, it being a district that is preserved, that has really special architectural characteristics, that those architectural characteristics are saved and enhanced, as well as being a place for small business. You guys have a lot of small businesses here in the downtown, and so that's something that's really special about the community. So what would you like to see for the downtown for the future, as well as the surrounding neighborhoods? So the culture, this being a very family-oriented, this being a lifelong community, so not just a community for people with young children, but also a community where people grow up, where people can have opportunities earlier on in their life, as well as a place where people can retire. And then also, we have a lot of feedback around this being a place that's very welcoming of newcomers, a very friendly community. And so that's something that, we'd like to understand. How can the city be a partner in reinforcing the culture that is here and supporting that? Being a complete community, so thinking about a community as a place to live, but also a place where you can access jobs and opportunity and work, and also enjoy going out to eat or spending time with family. So, these are just some of the things that we're thinking about, and we'd like to get your feedback. And if these are the right things that we should be addressing in this plan, and what's missing, and where do you see the city 20 years from now? So with that, I am going to pass it off to Graham. We'd like to hear from you for the rest of the night, so that you're not hearing from us for the rest of the night. But I do want to ask if anybody has any questions before we get into that.
You kind of average daily new times a car has calmed down. So like a trip is every time a car passes a
Okay, so there's increased traffic. We don't
There's
know.
increased traffic, yes.
And they do counts that I believe it's through the state that information.
That's right, the MoDOT counts, so looking at all the state routes, so Highway 2 and
Because I forget the slide, but I think 291 was more than any of the others.
yeah,
Which
it's,
strikes me as odd, but I saw the DDI and I didn't know what that was. There were things on my side.
so,
Oh, I got the Lisa data, like, nearly every day.
yeah, the trips, it's kind of hard to look at that one, because at first I was like, whoa, there's a ton of new trips on 291, and for sure there is, but when I was looking at the data, I looked at the aerial view, and I realized, oh, there's construction. So there's construction on the early years, so it made it look like the jump was a lot bigger. But yeah, there's definitely new trips coming in 291. It's a good question. Yeah.
On your new trips, now, is that compared to 1 year ago or 2 years ago?
It's 5 years, yeah.
5, okay.
Yeah, it was 60, so 4. It's
new trips on 291 is self-explanatory. When you build good roads and you put in center lane left turns and you make it convenient, businesses will locate there. Streets is one of the most important things this community needs to get done. And 291 is the example.
So that's a great segue. Does anybody else have a question? Before we jump in, thank you very much for that. Anybody else?
I have a question, back on permits. Where did you apply the permit and number of units for the senior center up north of the community building?
Where did we apply the permit?
Yeah, there's no indication that you counted it.
It should be included in the new housing units, so it should be included in the new housing unit counts, from the data set.
Just in the overall,
in your chart.
in the overall permit.
Huh?
We'll catch up with you when we're done here.
Yeah,
Can we do that? Talk about it in detail? Or we can talk about it. Anything else before we jump in? Okay.
I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for participating. A number of you are steering committees, technical committee members, and have been coming to meetings already. But between now and January, I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things that are going to be happening. In January is our next open house. We're at that point in time, we'll be talking about, starting to talk about implementation stuff, right?
yeah, we'll be starting to think about what are some ideas for implementation, but also thinking about, future land use, transportation systems, and starting to, put that on a map, think about what are the different places in the community, where do you grow, what kind of use, where do you put the industrial park versus neighborhoods. So those are some of the things that we'll be focusing on in this next phase in January.
And so that meeting, I can't remember the date, it'll be right after, or January 6th. Thank you, January 6th. We'll have two meetings with the steering technical committee, and then we have lined up a utility summit where we get together with all our utility partners, water districts, Osage Valley Electrical, Evergy, or whatever it'll be known by when we meet. All the utility partners, our industrial partners, the industries that are here in town. We'll be meeting with them. We're going to be meeting with the high school students, our traction team, the students of the month. That's next week. And so anybody who wants to be a high school student again, we're going to be meeting with the high school students since, quite frankly, they're all going to probably be on the city council and the planning commission in 20 years. So we better get their input. And then the chamber, and the first week of December, we're going to be meeting with the Chamber Economic Development Group. So that's what we're going to be doing between now and when we have this meeting, this next meeting on January 6th.
And transportation. And the transportation group.
The transportation group too. MoDOT is a key player in everything we do, obviously, MoDOT and Cass County. That's the other focus that we got. With that, anybody got anything else?
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.